Well, good afternoon, and while my GS Adventure is in at North Oxford Garages trying to have some of the connectivity issues sorted, the good guys and girls there have lent me the BMW R1250RT. So I thought, why not, while I'm taking the ride back up to collect my bike, give you a little bit of a rundown of what I see as the differences, the advantages, or otherwise, of the comparison between the GS and the RT. So if that's of interest to you, you might want to watch this video. Okay, so I've done 120 odd, 130 miles now on this machine. Most of it has been on dual carriageway, effectively motorway. The A34, which is, with my trips from Southampton up to Oxford, is becoming a little bit of a weekly commute. Not that there's huge amounts wrong with my bike, and not that I have any criticism of North Oxford Garages. It's just that well, I seem to have had a couple of issues that are just griping with me on the adventure. But anyway, all of that said, let's talk about the RT. She does have the 1250 shift cam engine, as we all know, so she was updated at pretty much the same time, late 2018, with the shift cam engine. She's also advertised as having a TFT screen, so when I got on her, I was expecting to see the 6.5-inch TFT that we see on the Adventure, and we see on the GS, and we see on the R, and we see on the even the S1000XR and the S1000RR. So I was surprised I didn't see it, and categorically these two clocks are analog. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I guess this part is the TFT, and not having ridden an RT before, I've no idea really what was there before. And this is obviously my sat nav, my nav 6 up here, has just been dropped into its slot. Now in the UK we do 3 different variants of the RT. We do the basic R1250RT, no other signification. Then we have the R1250RT SE, and that one effectively has, it appears, has one of the 3 available packs. So that consists of, a few extras. I'll not list them, but you can look that up yourself. And then I believe that this machine, I never asked the dealer, but I believe that this machine is the top of the range, which is the BMW R1250RT LE. And that has 2 of the 3 packs, and you can see here that you can add that additional pack as an optional extra, and for the purposes of the price comparison I'm going to add that, because it does have some of the items that I think you would be specified on the GS. But of course it's a difficult comparison, because the GS has some things that this doesn't, and this has some things the GS doesn't. But anyway, what I was trying to really get to, I guess, was the fact that the price comparison is very fair. So this bike is an LE. It does also have what's known as a sports pack, although that pack doesn't come under options, it really comes under the colourways. So this, I think, pretty red colour. Boys like red. I won't go any more into detail with that, but yes, it has this red colourway, and what the sports pack also does is it gives you a slightly different screen, in fact a narrower screen, so the wind protection on this bike, which we'll try and demonstrate on a faster road, will be quite a bit different maybe than you would get with the standard screen, the touring screen, or the bigger screens on this particular bike. But of course it does have an electric screen, which we'll go into a little bit later. You can see that in the mileage I've done this morning, which has mainly been with the cruise control on at 70 to 71 mile an hour, you'll see that I've actually got a 48.7 miles per gallon. I would be expecting to get slightly over 50 on my GS Adventure doing the same thing, and I wonder if that, because it's the same engine, I wonder if that is because of the sort of blunt front to this. You know, it must have much more, I guess, wind resistance than the GS or the GS Adventure. Now, that's one of its major features, because obviously this is really a touring version, an out-and-out touring version of the 1250 derivative, so it has very, very good weather protection. Now, one of the things I would say straight off is it's a much lower bike, so it is much more akin to the K1600 than it is to the R1250GS or the GS Adventure, which is a very much sit-up high bike, and that's one of the things that you'll have seen in my deliberations over changing to the Adventure. Road presence was one of those things that I really was, you know, keen on improving. So I guess one of the downsides to this bike is it is quite a bit lower, but obviously with it being lower, that also means that you've got a lot more control at stop. So, you know, you really can get both feet. I guess even if you're smaller than me, I'm 6'1", but even if you were down in the 5'8", 5'9" category, you would very much be able to control this bike feet down, and that in a way is just as important as, I guess, being upright. But I do feel a little more vulnerable on faster roads, because rather than seeing over cars, you'll probably not get the idea of that with this car in front of me, but rather than seeing over this, I'm actually having to look round it, whereas on my GS I'd very much be, you know, as tall as it. So that's one of the well, mainly for me a downside, but it's a bit of an upside that it's easier controllable as well, with your feet on the ground. Another thing about the bike is it's got a very strange riding position. For a tourer, you'd expect your feet to at least be sort of flat, straight down, making a 90-degree angle between top of legs and your lower leg drop. Now, I probably ride a motorcycle wrongly. I don't know why I would say wrongly, but when I'm on cruise control and going down motorways, effectively what this bike is made for, touring, I tend, when I'm relaxed, to actually work on tiptoe. So I would, you know, normally have my tiptoes or the balls of my feet on the pegs and just relaxing, just in a nice position. The pegs on this are swept further backwards, and if we actually look at that on the walk around that I do, you'll see that they're even angled, and they have scratch plates on them as well. So it's quite a sporty position that you're actually riding in. It's not uncomfortable, but what it does do is it sort of forces me to ride the bike a little bit more conventionally with the heels, you know, tucked into the pegs, which I guess is probably better anyway, because of course I should have my toes near to the brakes and near to the gears, but I'm really just sort of sensing that when I'm sort of cruising with the bike and just touring with it. Another thing that I do notice with this bike is everything is down. So normally I would be looking up here into my mirrors on the GS either side, which is a little bit just a movement of the eye, whereas I find this one is a little bit of a tip of the head, because the mirrors are all the way down here. Now, there's not anything particularly wrong with the mirrors. They've actually probably got slightly better visibility than the GS ones, because all I can really see is the bar ends in the mirrors, whereas in the GS I can see part of my elbow in them, and I guess it's really what you get used to. The other thing that I would say about the mirrors on this is that if you find yourself in the wrong gear and the bike's got to struggle for a bit of torque, so it's digging deep, these do vibrate quite severely, so you need to be in the right gear to be able to see visually out of these, but it's fairly trivial. Get yourself in the right gear, I would say. So that's another one. A couple of the other options this one has got, it's got the keyless ignition, which is an optional extra over and above the packs, and there's a couple more I think that I've identified that I'll show you here. What it doesn't have is the entertainment system, so you can see the speakers either side here, but the controls here, just stop at the bridge here at the Maybush, and we're now starting again. That would always be. I was just about to point out to you the controls, but if we look here, there's no volume controls or anything else down here, so that option has not been fitted. I'm not surprised. It's £1,000 option here in the UK. That's very, very expensive indeed. But anyway, it doesn't have that. What are the other things that we can tell you about the bike? The panniers on the back come as standard, so because the bike itself, so the bike is as specified here, so LE with the extra dynamic pack with the sports pack which gives you the red colour, like for like it's only about £200 or £300 more expensive than the GS Adventure that I bought recently. Now of course I had to buy the luggage on top of that, and my full luggage setup from memory, you can reference the review up here on the right hand side, but from memory I think that was something like 1600 quid. Well, this comes with the panniers, so that sort of levels out the difference in price between the two, but then you would have to buy the top box to level out the features for this one. And here's another shocker, the top box on this bike with the brake light is £1,060 as an option. Now it does actually centrally lock, so we've got a nice little lock button here which allows you to lock and unlock the panniers and the top box, so that in itself is a good thing. Means you don't technically have to carry the key. I guess you have to have the key in your pocket, because that probably becomes part of the keyless ignition. So let's have a look now at the windshield. Now this is one thing that I believe the GS should have. I mean, if I look at the new GSs that have come out, and I'm hopefully going to get a ride on those in a week or two, but there's a couple of features that I really like, and a couple that I think, well, you know, would I ever use them? And randomly, one of those is the adaptive headlight, because in the 2 and a bit years I've been back to motorcycling, I've actually put the headlight on twice. I think it may have come on a few other times in tunnels, but I think there's actually only 2 or 3 times that I've physically ridden the bike at night. I tend to be an early starter and an early finisher, so I mainly find myself riding in the daylight, but I'm not even sure that would be a benefit to me. What I do see as a benefit on those are the rear indicators, particularly doubling up as rear lights and brake lights. So I think that's that overall is a good feature. But one of the features that I really think they've skipped on the GS, which would be a benefit, is the electric screen. And part of the reason for that is that very nice BMW just went by there. Don't even know what it was. It looked like an old K1100 or 1300 or something. Anyway, back to the screen. This screen is a small screen, and believe me, whilst I may not get to show you how the screen works with regard to wind protection, you do find that when it's warm, it's nice actually to be able to roll the screen back down. Well, of course, on the GS, that's a case of leaning over here, taking your eye off the road, and winding the little knob on the right hand side. Winding your knob. Not sure I should have said that, but you know what I mean. Whereas this one is obviously electric and operated by a button, so you have the opportunity to be able to drop the screen when you wish, it's like so, and raise the screen when you get more up to wanting wind or rain or whatever protection. So, you know, I think that is a major benefit of having an electric screen, and that's definitely an option that or a feature that I would love to see fitted to the GS, because quite often you do want some airflow to be able to cool you down. Not so often in the UK, but certainly if you're touring in warmer climes. Now obviously this has the Boxer engine, and I'm going to make a very big comment here that I'm sure some of you have already noticed, and that is that, you know, the Boxer gets a very poor rap with regard to the noise it makes. People call it agricultural. It's a very reliable engine, otherwise it wouldn't have been sold on so many bikes as it has. So it's a very reliable engine, but it can't be disputed that it sounds noisy. But I do believe that part of that is by the fact that the cylinders, being horizontally opposed, stick out so far beyond the bike. So certainly if you compare the R1250R or the R1250GS standard, not so much the R1250GS Adventure, because as you've already seen, because of the outward flaring of the tank, that covers quite a lot of the cylinders as well, but this is an even more covered cylinders. So if we actually look at the walk around here, or I'll maybe do a couple of stills, you can see that all you can see from the riding position is the very tips of the cam covers, and honestly it results in a very, very quiet motorcycle. And I think, if we're totally fair, most other bikes that people say it's so smooth or it's so quiet is because the engine is tucked away under the tank or tucked away behind a fairing, a little bit like the K1600. Now yes, you can hear it, and you can hear it's a familiar Boxer sound, but it doesn't make anywhere near as much noise as, for example, my Adventure, or even more so my GS before that. And some of that as well will be tyre noise. I have Bridgestone Battle Axe A41 Adventures on my new GS Adventure, and those are noisy tyres. You can see, you know, change a road surface to a more gritty surface and it almost sounds like the engine has suddenly had a bag of bolts dropped into it. That's more tyre noise than it actually is engine noise. It's just the resonance coming up through the bike. This bike has Metzlers fitted to it because of course it's a road bike, totally road bike, whereas the Battle Axe I think are 80/20s or something. So it's going to be quieter anyway on the road, but certainly it's noticeable just how smooth and quiet the Boxer engine sounds. Now I may also be imagining this, because I'm imagining they're using exactly the same electronics, but the Gear Shift Pro, which allows you to do the quick shifting and the blipper, so quick shifting up the box, which is incredibly good on my bike. I love it. You know, when you really do gun it a little, you can flick through the gears beautifully. But I never really use the downshifter, the blipper, and the reason for that is I've never really found the technique of it. This one, I've sort of found the technique, and it just works. So I'm looking forward to getting back to my bike to actually try that and see whether mine is anywhere near as good. I'm sorry this has been quite such a slow ride. We're in a 50 limit anyway all the way along here, but I have picked up a lot of traffic. But irrespective of that, hopefully it's given you a little bit of an insight still as to my thoughts between the two, having ridden them. I'll try and do a little bit of dual carriageway riding before we get back to the dealership, so that you can actually see the very marked difference in noise and wind actually when we put the screen down. Now a couple of other things it has which you'd expect. It's got heated grips. The heated grips I think have a 6 or 7 position setting, which I know the new GS has a 5 position setting against my 2. I would maintain if you gave it 30 you would still probably only use 2 of them, so I don't know as that's a massive improvement. We all know that heated grips are a lovely option for sure. This one also has a heated seat. Now that's an interesting concept to me, because of all the things that have been cold on a motorcycle for me, my backside has never been one of them. I generally wear obviously protective clothing, so I've got my heavier suit on today because it might rain. I nearly always wear a base layer, and then, not that you want to know, but boxers underneath that. And generally my backside is hot, and hot results in sweat, and sweat results in nappy rash, and nappy rash results in pain. And so I'm not really sure. I've not ridden in a minus 20 or any of that, so maybe a warm seat would be nice there. But Seb in the dealership said don't knock it till you tried it. Well, I tried it on the 70 miles home. It seemed to take forever to get going, and then once it did get going it became uncomfortably hot, and frankly I didn't like it. Now on the new GS's it's a £290 option, so would I take it? Yes, I probably would, because you'll never get passenger and rider seat heating for £290 in the aftermarket. You're in the range of £1,000, so it's a very good priced option. But of course this operates exactly the same, so you get the heated seat for the rider, if I can just get that up quickly before we reach this roundabout. So there is the heating seat for the rider, and the whizzy wheel will move that up and down the scale. So I think that's 5 settings. I'm not able to count because I'm needing to pay attention to the road, but I think it's 5 settings. The passenger seat is actually operated by a switch on the side of their seat, which switches the heating on or off, and then allows them to operate, I think, a two setting, so a setting which will allow them to switch it onto high or low, which is perfectly adequate. But honestly, for me, if you said to me, Nick, you can have a heated seat or you could have an electric screen randomly, I would choose the electric screen. Anyway, we're going to get now onto the dual carriageway. Hopefully I can demonstrate to you the difference in the screen up and the screen down, so you can see just how much protection this is giving, because it's obviously more visual at motorway type speeds. So let's get ourselves up here. Obviously the bike itself performs just exactly the same as the Adventure, because it's exactly the same engine. I don't think the gearing is any different or anything else. So it's a very performant engine, and it's definitely a tourer. Anyway, here we are now up at motorway speed, so we'll just get ourselves down to 70 and set the cruise control, and actually we'll just bring her up a little bit in speed, up to a 70, hoping that, actually 71, hoping that we don't run out of road. And now I'm going to lower the screen, so you'll hopefully now get some idea. So let's have a very quick listen with the screen up, and then I'll drop it down. So there you are. I think that's probably just about as visual as it could get. And you can see that even this sports screen, and this is the sports screen, does offer a very good degree of protection. So so that is as sort of visual or oral as you could actually get. Anyway, I'm just on my way back to the dealership now. I'll be taking the RT back to them. She handles very nicely. She is basically sits in the shadow of the GS quite a bit, because the GS is quite so popular. But if I'm honest with you, if your bag is chewing miles and touring, and you don't need to have, I don't know, the popularity of or the wow factor in some ways of the GS, and really all you want to do is find a functional tourer, the RT gets overlooked far too many times. She has a great engine, she's very quiet, she's very smooth, she's very protected, and she would, I'm sure, chew the miles very effectively. If you've liked this video, thumbs up, doesn't take you a second, always help to rate the video and move it up the rankings and get more subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, have a look at what the channel holds. There's a ton of stuff that I do. I've got a load of videos coming up about various things to do with BMW and the R1250GS Adventure in particular, so subscribing would be good. Don't forget to press the notification bell, and when you press the notification bell, hit the all to receive basically all of the alerts of when I post a new video. I don't post every day or even every week. They are just occasional, so you're not going to get bombarded, but it'd be great to have you along. Again, any comments you've got with my assessment of the GS Adventure compared to the RT would always be welcome. If you've got an RT, anything else you want to add would always be welcome. I do try to answer all of your comments. So stay safe, ride safe. We'll see you next time. Thanks for viewing the video, and thanks for coming along. Goodbye. On the day that I finish my edit of the review of the R1250RT, BMW bring out a brand new R1250RT.
However, it's got some great new features, which include a 10.25-inch Full HD resolution TFT screen, which has got split screen functionality. The previously optional LED headlight is now fitted as standard, and the front end has basically been fully redesigned with extra airflow as well fitted into special ducts in the screen. The ShiftCam 1250 boxer engine has been retained, as you would expect, but it is now, I think, Euro 5 compliant. If you've got a wireless mobile phone, you're in for a treat, because in a compartment there is now the ability to wirelessly charge your mobile phone. It does also have USB connectivity, so you can charge older phones too. The old audio buttons on the side of the fairing have been repurposed as favourite buttons, which you can allocate to tasks such as the heated seat or navigation. And the navigation has finally now been fully functionalised and pushed into the TFT screen. It still uses the BMW connected app, but it does do away with the need for a Nav6 optional extra. The adaptive cruise control is a great feature. If you've had this on a car, you set the speed, you set the distance from the vehicle in front, and the bike will retain that distance adjusting the speed. The audio option is still an eye-watering £1,115, but it is now built into the TFT and the volume adjusted via the Whizzy Wheel. If you have the sensible options including audio, it does however come in at an eye-watering £21,835.